Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Yay.
Hi, everybody. We are so excited. In case you're new around here and you need to know who we are, I am Hillary Buchholz, and I have with me Patty Quinn, and we are the co-founders of We Heart Hounds. And we are so excited because we also have a couple of very special guests with us here today as well.
Amazingly gorgeous, wonderful, talented women. I'm so excited to have you here with us today. Robin Bennett and Susan Briggs, we're super, super happy to have you. If you've been following us, Susan's been here before, so she's old hat. We had a really great conversation with her, but brought Robin in. We got to get the dynamic duo from the dog gurus together to talk about some wonderful things. I'm really hoping we've got some folks in the audience that will just be chomping at the bit for this topic for today. These two gals take their heart, their passion, all their years of experience and help folks learn how to launch and grow their pet care businesses. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanhanks for having us. We're really excited. I'm excited to join Susan this time since she was solo last time.
Yeah, I'll be back. It flew by last time, so I'm looking forward to another great conversation.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Thank you.
So yeah, as Patty mentioned, you guys help people get into dog care businesses or the world of doggy daycare. Can you give us a little bit of background on how you do that and what you do to support people in that venture?
Sure. Yeah, Susan and I both have owned our own facilities. So we kind of got started many, many moons ago with our own facilities. I'm a dog trainer and I had a training facility in Virginia and then added daycare to that and owned that company for about 18 years. Susan also had her own facility. She was in Houston, Texas. And so over the years, we really did start trying to want to help people get started because it really is sort of there's not a lot of guidance out there. At least there was pretty much no guidance. So it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of figuring out what you're doing. And of course, you need to have some a little bit of understanding the business side of it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of resources out there for that. But on the actual operation side and actually knowing what to do with the dogs and knowing how to keep the dogs safe, there was really nothing out there for that. So that was really one of the reasons that we started one of our programs, which is called Launch Formula. And it really does help to get you in from the ground floor, understanding what is involved with actually caring for live animals, because we want you to learn that before you actually bring the animals into your care. So there's a lot that goes into it. And so we tried to put it into kind of step-by-step process for people that were interested in opening their own business.
And how to lead play groups. And Robin had written a book on getting a daycare started. And I asked her if she would have any interest in kind of targeting the staff training side of teaching body language and how to lead play groups. And she said, sure. So we lived in different states, but through email, we wrote a book together and published Off-Leash Dog Play, a complete guide to safety and fun back in 2007. And it became really the go-to resource for doggy daycares to train staff. And we went to conferences and sold our book and talked to people about it. And then they're like, body language is great in pictures, but we really need video. And so we decided that, okay, that makes sense. And so we then put together a staff training program called Knowing Dogs that includes video. So it's a lot of the content from the book, but expanded to include video. And then from that, we just found ourselves consulting and helping people that were either had doggy daycares or wanted to get started. And after we both had sold our other businesses, said, I think there's an opportunity here to just share more of our knowledge and help people avoid mistakes. And so in 2013, we started the Dog Gurus as a membership site, and we've just grown programs on top of that.
I just think that's fantastic.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that we didn't have this long range plan to get where we are now. It just sort of developed over time, and we kept being open to what was needed and what we were getting asked to provide, and it just kind of morphed into what it is today. So, I will say that the book that we wrote I just have to point out that we wrote that book before, really, like when the internet was still relatively new, no Dropbox, no Zoom meetings, so literally it was like emailing chapters to each other. There was no like collaborative online thing. So we kind of laugh about that now because we didn't realize how
you're pioneers. You are pioneers out there working virtually, together. That's
exactly.
and that just goes to show the dedication and love of, obviously what you do, and wanting to share that with everybody. That's just a wonderful thing. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and how much of a need there was for it as well, because like just with all your guys' knowledge, getting that feedback and keeping, creating a whole company based around that really does kind of show your passion for it and how very needed it was for
and that all really does stem from our passion for the dogs. Like we want dogs to be taken well care of, and obviously that goes for any animal. But what we also know is from experience, when you make mistakes, it's the dogs that potentially have the downside of that is that you end up with dogs that get hurt or injured. So we just really are passionate about saying, look, we know the mistakes because some of them we've made, and we work with so many facilities now that we can really help to, help you avoid those mistakes and really get your business up and running in a way that generates revenue for you, but also takes the best possible care of the dog. So that really is where our passion comes from.
Well, and it's one thing, to have a love of animals and think, oh gosh, wouldn't it be great to run a business? And then, as you said, initially people might have the business side of things, bookkeeping and all that kind of stuff that they can get access to. But really that body language, working with the dogs, working with pet parents, getting to know, what's going on in the dog's life so that, last week maybe things were fine, but this week maybe things in the household are a little topsy-turvy. And so the dog might be behaving differently or acting differently or whatever. Like just getting to know all of those things is so critical and important. It's wonderful that you're able to share that with everybody and give that side of the business that really is so important. So that's really cool. How does somebody know if they're a good fit for this type of business? Is there something
I love that question because there's the reality and then there's the what really maybe should be going into it, because the reality is how people usually get started in this business is because they just love dogs. A lot of stories we hear come from not being able to find a place for their own dog, so they feel like there's a absence of something needed in their own community because they can't find it. And they truly do love dogs and they see an opportunity to get out of the rat race of maybe where they're working.
Right.
They really get into it because of their love of dogs. We mostly see that type of person, but most of them really should have more of a business background or maybe learn more business. But that's one of the things that we do help to teach, because a lot of people get into it, they get started, and then 2 years later, they're thinking, how do I make money? And how do I figure out my profit and loss statement? And, what do I do for the business part of this? So that's actually becomes part of what we end up teaching, because so many people have that love of dogs, but don't necessarily have the business background. But really, I think that kind of goes to any entrepreneur. They love what they're going to do. They just jump in feet first and they figure out what they need to do. They're learning as they go. And I think we see that a lot, which is great, because that means you have some really great people out there taking care of pets because they really, really love them.
Yeah. I mean, it is a tough business to be in. It's very rewarding, but it does take a lot of dedication, and there's a lot of weight and responsibility that you have to carry. And so being that weight of being responsible for the lives of the pets in your care is huge. So, recognizing that is really important. And the other thing that people sometimes underestimate is so much of your time is really dealt with people, either your staff or clients versus the dogs. So you don't necessarily get to play with dogs all day, although there's never, for Robin and I, a puppy that would come into the building that you didn't meet. So, I mean, it definitely has its perks. But you've got to be a good people person to really survive in this business too, as well as having a strong why related, I think, to the pet care too.
Yeah. Yeah,
That makes
I
sense.
totally agree with that.
for sure.
So are people required to get a license or a certification to own this kind of business? And how do they go about getting that kind of certification or licensing if it's required?
Well, I'll start with that, and then Susan, I'll toss it to you for the certification piece of it. But so good and bad, the daycare industry or the pet boarding and daycare industry, really similar to the dog training industry, is really an unregulated industry. So the good thing is that is a very low bar to entry. You can, basically go get business cards printed and register with your county or state or municipality and start a business. So that's kind of a good thing. The bad side of that is it's not regulated, which means anybody can start. So you really don't know anything unless you ask questions about the people
Right.
that you're leaving your animals with. You really don't know anything about how good they're going to be because there aren't any requirements for the county or state has. Sometimes there are regulations in terms of the building. So there's some regulations for how you might build your building, especially if you're doing like a kennel where they might dictate how much airflow there is or how the drain works or that kind of thing. Sometimes some states have some limitations on like how many dogs you can put together, but the overall care and education required and all that is actually not regulated at all, which is one of the things that we really promote is making sure that your team is getting educated, which is one of the reasons we offer staff training programs. And then Susan actually was instrumental in forming a certification program for our industry. So Susan, I'll let you talk about that because that's really what we recommend people aim for, certification by an independent body for our actual industry. So do you want to talk about that, Susan?
Yeah, because I just didn't have enough to do a few years ago. Myself and Charlotte Biggs started the Professional Animal Care Certification Council that would bring independent exam testing to our industry. And we are very proud that we now have 3 levels of certification, which actually does test that the people who pass it have the knowledge that a pool of industry volunteers defined as needed to be a professional animal care provider, manager, and operator.
Wonderful.
So if people are interested in finding someone who truly has validated their knowledge and is certified, they can find that at paccert.org. And it's growing. It is fairly new. The other thing is if you have a provider that you know is great and haven't become certified, encourage them to do so because they will stand out in their marketplace because it is taking that extra step to get that certification, which also requires ongoing continuing education credits. So someone who's certified taking care of your pet is also committed to ongoing learning and knowledge. Every 3 years, they have to recertify with continuing education. So it's new. We hope and want it to grow because it definitely is bringing something that the industry lacks because of the lack of regulation. And we do think we're better equipped as an industry to know what's required. I mean, governments do is they'll put, they'll limit the number of dogs that can be in a group, which still doesn't mean it's going to be safe because you still don't know the knowledge of the person that's watching the dogs or if someone is even really watching the dogs. So, safety, you can't count on the government to keep the industry safe, in our opinion. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we do like that it's a third-party certification process. So it's not, if you take the Dog Guru's material, which obviously I think is very good, that doesn't certify you. That does provide you with education, which is hugely valuable. And that education can help to prepare you for certification. But we are really big proponents of that third-party independent certification that tests your knowledge so that you, can go out there and say with certainty that you have the knowledge and skills for what you're doing. So we do recommend that people work through that. And that if you're a pet parent looking, like Susan said, looking for a facility, that's one of the things I would ask the facility is what kind of education do they have and what kind of certifications do they have? Because PAC is really the one that we would be looking for.
Right. That's fantastic. I mean, kudos to you and you both, but Susan, that's just amazing. Thank you so much. I mean, let's hope, fingers crossed, that this becomes the industry standard across the board for everybody, and recognized by everybody in the industry as the certification model to follow and pursue. So, and I know as a pet parent, if I was choosing between a dog facility that had certification and one that didn't, guess which one I would probably go with, right? So if you're not certified and you have a pet care business, please, look into that. Look into the education that'll prepare you for that certification, and then get PAC certified. I think that would be hugely helpful for you. So
one thing we're really proud of is we also have a code of ethics that people agree to operate by and how they care for the pet, which is very much focused on positive, least intrusive, minimal harm done. And I think that is also an important part of this certification program, is a code of ethics of how you operate and care for animals.
Yeah. So we were talking about, higher quality or, daycare facilities that kind of go above and beyond. And I know getting that certification is one thing, but there's also some structured models, right, that you can provide to provide the best care for your customers. Can either of you kind of describe some of those to us?
Yeah. So for many, many years, and daycare especially is really a relatively new industry. It's only really been around for about 20 years, maybe 25 or so. And when it first started, and this including me and Susan, when we started our daycares, we were doing pretty much all day play. So a dog would get dropped off in the morning, they would be put in a group, they would play all day long, they would go home, and that was it. You didn't really provide a ton of structure or any specific activities. Some people did, but by and large, the industry was like all day play, dogs go home, that's it. And what we have learned over the past several years is that that's really not the healthiest way. Dogs do have fun that way. Some dogs do. Some dogs get overly tired when they are playing all day long, and they really need more rest. So one of the first things Susan and I started promoting was more rest periods. Let's just give the dogs more rest. It's just, you look at your own dogs. They're not playing nonstop for 8 hours a day. And many dogs were going home so tired that they wouldn't even wake up for dinner. I mean, they were just exhausted. And so it's just not a healthy situation. It's not a healthy kind of exhaustion. So Susan and I started recommending more rest for dogs. And then we have now, about 7 or 8 years ago, we started recommending what we were calling daycare 2.0, which is really an enrichment based model of daycare. And in that model, it is a little bit more structured. So we kind of equate it to like a Montessori school, where you bring the kids in and they don't just put them in a group to have recess all day. They have a lot of fun, but they do some things that are helping to educate them. And that's the same thing we're doing with that type of a model of daycare, is you're bringing them in. They do still get to play with their dog buddies. So they'll have some playtime sessions just for play itself. But then there's also a little bit more of a structure to the day, where they are scheduled for more rest periods. They're scheduled for things that mentally enrich them. So they might just get a puzzle toy to play with by themselves for a while. They might get some specific fun training activities, like learning how to go through obstacles or go on top of something or go under, a tunnel or whatever. So it's a lot more activity focused, with less play, all day play, and more interactive activities with smaller groups of dogs and with the team of staff that's there as well. So I don't know, Susan, if you want to expand on that at all.
No, I mean, and what we like is every business can really create the schedule and module that fits their business, their interest, and the dogs that are coming to them. The other thing we have found is a lot of dogs don't enjoy the really big play groups. So the other nice thing about this model is, Robin said, it's usually a smaller group of dogs, which we found dogs tend to play better in smaller groups overall instead of the really big ones. So it's a more holistic approach to care. And what we've seen is the dogs really enjoy it more. It's more engaging for the staff. I mean, the job of watching big play groups is really hard. It's like being a lifeguard. And it's really hard on the staff. And so I think if anybody's, been around a daycare a lot, they understand their staff turnover. So this model is more engaging for the staff. And so some of those great people tend to stay longer. And it is, good for the business. So we really like it. The businesses that have implemented it like it and say their clients love it, and even the dogs. The dogs know if they still do both, that they can tell when their enrichment activities are going to start, and they just get super excited for them.
That's great.
And
Yeah,
the dogs are still tired at the end of the day, but it's not that same exhaustion, which I think is kind of unhealthy. So,
which is probably the real exhaustion is probably from the stress, right? Not from the excitement or the learning. It's more of just, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed because there's so much stimulus around me with all these dogs in one large group, right? And and I can imagine it would be so much easier for them to acclimate back into home life, after having a more relaxing activity kind of play time.
Exactly. So. Yeah. And I think they also have so much more fun. Just in a large group of dogs, there's usually a few that are very active and playing, but then there's the ones we call wallflowers, which are not causing any trouble, but they're more laying around the side. Yeah, like your little guy.
Ginger, she would definitely be cowering in a corner. She's scared of everything. So
we look at that big play group and really half the dogs aren't even playing. They're kind of like, whoa, this is a lot of activity going on. I'm just going to watch from the side. But when you put them in smaller groups and you do very specific activities, you'll find activities that, one dog who never played at all in a large play group all of a sudden just completely comes out of his shell and is jumping through a tunnel or going through obstacles or whatever. So it's just much better tailored to what the dogs really like.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah, and sometimes what our members and businesses are kind of fearful of going to this model is it does have more rest periods in there for the pets throughout the day, the dogs throughout the day, and they're like, oh, the dog owners are going to be concerned about that their dogs have more rest time. But it's really shown that even with more rest time, that's healthier for the dog too.
Right.
That they go home and they can interact with the family and have dinner, and that they're still tired, but it's that healthy tired.
Right. Exactly. Well, we've got a comment. I'm sorry, Hillary, real quick. We got a comment from John. Thank you. It's been a while. Your comment's been up here for a little while. I just want to acknowledge. So he's been a kennel hand. And so I'm guessing, John, if you'd like to share some more of your experience as a kennel hand, but I'm guessing having more of that structured work environment would make it easier to be a kennel hand or work, at a daycare facility. So thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah. So if somebody is already using a daycare, how can they find out if they're using these kind of models, or maybe kind of asking or recommending if they could kind of implement some of these types of models as well?
Yeah, I would look for a facility or talk to the facility owner about what the structure looks like for the day of daycare. And like I said, you're really looking for a model where every 45 minutes to maybe 90 minutes, the dog is getting rotated into a different activity and possibly a different location, but definitely a different activity. I would also be asking how large the groups are, because most enrichment-based models are smaller groups. So they might have a period of time when they're in a large group of 10 or 15 dogs, but a lot of the times they're in a group that's 6 to 8 dogs, which just allows for a little bit more play, a little bit more fun. And then just really finding out if they do any enrichment or sort of academy type style. Those are probably the two most common phrases that we hear in terms of the naming of it. And again, if it's just all day play, then that usually tells you they're not doing the enrichment based model. And they might be willing to, if you have a facility that's doing all day play, we have a lot of facilities that we work with that do both. They do all day play, and then they also offer sort of a VIP option, which is this enrichment based model. So you could also ask, if they don't have that, you could ask them if you could have them create a special program for your dog where they're getting a little bit more tailored. And if your dog has really good buddies that they come on the same days and they love to play together, then those pet parents might want to join together and say, hey, we want to create a special program just for us, and see if the facility be willing to do something like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
That is great. So for those that are not looking to open up their own daycare per se, do you have other ideas, business ventures that might interest somebody who's in love with their dogs or loves dogs.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. There's different ways to get started. You can definitely volunteer, which a lot of people do volunteer. But if you really want to make some money, there's one of the newer things we've seen is a site called Sniff Spot. So if you have like a great space that's fenced and secure for dogs, you can actually list on that and rent out by the hour your play space. So parents can
That's great. So like your backyard and stuff, like,
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
We've seen people even do that just on a smaller basis with just neighborhood dogs that they know get along, and they, invite them over for play dates or whatever. We also do have a lot of our facilities that we work with, or pet business owners, I guess I should say, that we work with, who started or are still in their home. So there are people that actually do doggy daycare out of their home. Obviously, you have to make sure that your county or city allows that. So you would have to still make sure the zoning's appropriate and all that. So Susan and I would say, no matter what you're starting, we would still do it professionally and legally. So you would want to make sure that, depending on where you live, you have the ability to get that type of zoning to allow you to operate something like that out of your home. And obviously there's usually restrictions on how many dogs you can bring in, but we do have businesses that have very successful daycare boarding facilities that are just doing it from their own property. Right. So that's
amazing. Well, and so even if you're doing something like a rover.com or your dog walker or your pet sitter or something like that, I still think taking some of the classes that you offer so that you're learning how to read body language of dogs and all of that kind of stuff is super important if you want to be in the pet industry in whatever shape or form. I think it's the more the love of dogs can drive your passion, right? But the more that sorry, my little one wants to get under her blanket. The more you know about pups and their quirky behaviors, I think it just makes it enriches your whole business. Not only does it enrich the experience of the pups and the parents, the pet parents that you're dealing with, but I think it just helps everybody. It makes your job easier, right? In terms of dealing with animals and that kind of thing. So I think prevention is the key, right? You want to be able to read that language and be able to prevent things from happening that could escalate, or putting certain dogs in groups that would be more conducive to being with shy dogs being with shy dogs, or active dogs being with active dogs, or whatever you want to call it. But I think education is never a bad thing, and so I think signing up for your classes, and even if you're not necessarily going to open up your own facility, pet care, like fancy pet care facility, having that knowledge and education is so important.
Yeah, and I would 100% agree with that. I think even just for pet parents, I always say that if you just can understand what your dog is saying, like every question you have about your dog, should I do this with him or should I do that with them? Should I take him to the park or should I take him, on a river walk or whatever? Like all those questions that you ask, the dog is giving you the answer. But if you haven't educated yourself to understand the dog body language, it's just a lot harder. So there's little miscommunications all the time between pet parents and their own pets, just because they haven't learned the subtleties of canine body language. So the more of that you learn, I'll tell you, it just does change your relationship with your dog, because you really can understand what the dog's telling you. And I think if you're going to take care of other people's dogs, whether it is as a pet sitter, a dog walker, doing daycare out of your home, or whether you get a brick and mortar facility, you have the responsibility, as Susan mentioned at the very beginning, of doing everything you can to make sure that pet in your care is safe. And that's the biggest thing that we want to make sure people understand is it's, it sounds simple. Oh, well, I'll take somebody's dog and just watch them for a little bit. But there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And you really want to make sure you've equipped yourself to handle those and ideally prevent them from happening. And just about every time Susan and I see a story about an injury or something that's happened when an animal is in someone's care, almost always we can see the red flags, that could have been prevented if there was education in place prior to the dog coming in. So
Right.
that's just a soapbox issue. I'll stop talking now.
No, I think it's,
but
it's absolutely critical. I mean, if you think of somebody that starts a restaurant, you want to make sure the food is safe. You're not getting people sick because they could die from it. If you have a hotel and you're, having people stay overnight, you want to make sure they're safe and that nothing happens to them because they could die or something terrible could happen. If you have a dog in your care, that's another life, that belongs to somebody else, and you want to care for that as if it's yours, and you want to make sure that they're safe and happy and healthy and hopefully more enriched and better off, right, in your care. So it is a critical, important point. And I mean, you have to take things seriously. As much as you love dogs and you want to play and pet and cuddle and snuggle with them, somebody else's dog is a bigger responsibility, right? So you want to take that seriously.
And we do see this as a profession, and we are trying to, provide the education and, raise that bar of performance and looking at ourselves as professionals and, charging rates based on having that education and certification as a professional pet care provider. It does make a difference. It could make the difference between life and death for your pet, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I love this. And I love the idea of even just pet parents like myself that's not looking to open up a daycare facility and learning more. I mean, how many times have we all said, I wish I knew what my dog was telling me. I wish I knew what they were saying. If they could only talk, right? So yeah, the more we can get to know how our dogs are speaking to us, the closer the bonds that we have with our pups, the better the relationship. And the more you can share that knowledge with other people in your own pet's circle, right? Your own family and stuff. So not only would other family members get to learn more about how that dog is relating to them, but if you have a pet sitter coming over, you can say, hey, this is what my dog does or says, kind of, this is what they mean when they're doing X, Y, Z. So just sharing that knowledge and that love. And I think that's just amazing. So you gals are just fantastic. I love it. Thank you for all you do.
Yeah. Well, and I think the fact that it's built on the foundation of safety first, like that, that's the most important key thing. And then building your business with that foundation gives you so much room to grow. Like if you're starting there and then saying, okay, I'm going to build from here. But the very most important thing is that these dogs in my care, this is my ultimate responsibility, and keep them safe, and then build from there on building my profession, building my prestige, and building really kind of happy, healthy environments for these dogs to come and, be enriched. I think it's amazing. But speaking of that, where can people go to find your courses and kind of learn some of these skills that are your passion that you've brought out for them?
They can find us at our website, which is thedoggurus.com. And we have all kinds of information on there. There's some free PDFs, there's some free downloads, and then there's information on the courses and some other products and services that are some for pet parents and mostly for daycare boarding facility owners or anyone really in the pet industry. We have resources for anyone business wise that's operating a business, pet care business.
Yeah, but keep your minds open, all you pet parents out there. Really, I think this is a huge opportunity for you to gain some real good insight into your own pet's personality, what they want, what they don't want, in life. And again, I think it just builds that bond and makes that stronger, which is something we all want to have with our pets. So,
well, and having that step-by-step information kind of laid out for you is amazing. Like starting a new especially if you're starting something new from scratch, starting a new business is such a daunting thing, but to have these kind of resources to help you not only on the keeping the dog safe side, but also on the business side, like that's amazing. That's a huge resource for somebody that's starting out. So
yeah, we always say we wish we had it when we had started.
Yeah. Yeah.
would have sped up the whole process.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you gals have, learned all of the hard lessons and made things so much easier for others that want to start this business. And not only do you have it in book form and video form, you provide live access so people can get their questions answered directly from the gurus themselves, right? So that's just, everybody needs a mentor, right? Anybody that wants to pursue something and do it really, really well, those people choose experts and mentors to kind of guide them along the way. And you gals are the perfect for this endeavor. And I would highly, highly encourage. Come on, you guys, all you people out there sitting at the edge of your seat, grab your computer mouse and go to the doggurus.com, or Dog Gurus is on Facebook. If you're watching us here, just type in the Dog Gurus and you'll find them on Facebook as well. And I'm sure everywhere else out in cyberspace, they're out there. Give them a try. I can't recommend them any higher than I can. So you gals are so great. We're so happy to have you with us today. Thank you so much. My heart is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger as we talk, because I just love this. I just think it's such a service for so many people. And all of that hard work and that labor of love that you put in for over 20 years is just, it's amazing. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
You gals are amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you're watching on the replay, or if anybody has any questions, type them below and we'll be sure to get Robin and Susan to answer those questions for you. And thanks again.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.